Have you ever felt stuck? Not necessarily technically or stylistically, but sonically. You've spent so much time playing the same old phrases, the same old licks, the same old notes. But then, all of a sudden, you see it. And it hits you like a ton of bricks. It's new, it's fresh, but it's also unfamiliar, and you kind of just have to ask the question. So why would anybody play one of these? A simple question, right? At least that's what I thought, but here's the deal. I'm gonna let you in on something. That wasn't just any regular guitar, but that's not really where this started, so let me give you some backstory. You see, this all began about a year ago when I started hearing about this new guitar player that everyone was just obsessed with. And it was really interesting because it wasn't just the older generation or the younger generation who seemed to be praising him. Everyone from Clapton to Mayer seemed to be absolutely obsessed with his unique approach to the guitar. Now, at first, I didn't even believe the hype. I mean, new guitar players come around all the time, and a lot of them don't even end up sticking around, so why should I care about this guy? But the more I questioned, the more I kept seeing people on Instagram non-stop talking about this dude and his playing style and how it's like nothing they had ever heard before, and finally I caved and decided, okay, I'll check this dude's music out. So I open up my laptop, get onto YouTube, and start typing in the letters mk.gee. And the second I press enter, this video pops up. And the thumbnail, it's of this long-haired dude. He's playing a Jag with the forest in the background. It's really interesting. So I decide to click on it, and for the next 3 minutes and 10 seconds, I am absolutely captivated by everything I'm hearing. It was like everyone was just so right. It was different. It had this like slightly 80s influence, but also it was the parts that he was playing, and they were so intricate along with the vocals and the lyrics. It was so different and so new. I knew that this was going to be the next rabbit hole that I went down with my playing because I wanted to know how he got his tone and how he came up with these licks. So I started to noodle around with it and noticed that something was just a little bit off. He was clearly playing in an alternate tuning, but nothing that I had ever used before. So I started looking up different tabs and tutorials and found out he was using very specific variations of baritone tunings. But the thing that really got to me was the actual way that the guitar sounded, because clearly he was doing something different than just your basic standard tuning. Now, I had played songs with different tunings before. I had consistently recorded in Dadgad and a few other variations, but this was the lowest that I had ever gone by far. It just felt so unfamiliar, like I had no clue what I was doing, but fortunately for me, I knew there were other guitar players who actually did.
I was making my first record, wanted to try something different. I think I was in a big Doyle Bramhall phase, which I'm kind of on and off, always in a Doyle Bramhall phase, but he had a couple songs where it was like this low kind of baritone sound, and it was just like, there's something about it that was really fun.
So this is Ariel, and what you need to know is he might actually be one of the best guitar players in the world, and also he's no stranger to baritone tuning.
And I was like, what if I try to get that sound and get that vibe? So I took a Tiesco Del Rey, which is a guitar that's worth literally maybe $50. This old Japanese guitar that I bought at a pawn shop in Indiana years and years and years ago. And I tuned it from standard to B standard, which is like a fourth down. There was this thing about it, this weight to it, this something. It just felt like an untapped territory for me, sonically speaking, where I'm so used to hearing guitar range, like sonically living in this hemisphere of like, it's bright, it's in your face, it cuts, it's pretty, but this was like, it cuts, but it's thick and it's warm and like fuller. It just felt different.
Yeah.
You know, if everyone's doing this one thing, I'm very excited about this thing that not many people are doing. The way I do it, which is taking a standard scale-length guitar, like a Strat, like is 25.5, or a Tele, or most guitars live around that, and putting slightly heavier strings on that and tuning that to B, then it starts to sound big and huge, but it still sounds like guitar. I think no matter what, like when you tune lower than what the instrument's typically in, it's gonna give you some kind of unique sonic palette or color, right?
So talking to Ariel gave me a crazy amount of good information, but learning about baritone tunings was really only half the equation. Even though I had opened the door into these new and unique tunings, I still wanted to learn more about the greater landscape of the baritone world. Because real talk, even though I had seen guys like McGee tune down and other players use a similar vernacular and similar sounds, some of their guitars just sounded a little bit different. These weren't just standard guitars being tuned down. These were baritone guitars, but what would make them so different they would warrant a completely different instrument being used? And that's where I decided to take a closer look, and that is where this guy came into the picture. Because I had seen this company popping up mainly with a lot of Instagram guitarists called Orangewood, and they had made some really cool acoustics, but not necessarily my thing. But then one day, I'm scrolling through and something interesting pops up. I see that they've made a new guitar, and not just any new guitar, it's a baritone. So it got here and I started playing it, but I still had a lot of questions, like more than I had had with a guitar in a long time. So I started asking around.
I was in a studio with an old rock band I had. This was probably at least 10 years, 2009 or 8 even. And we were working on some songs, and the engineer who was kind of helping me produce was like, "Hey, why don't you try a baritone guitar on this part?" And I was like, "What's that?" I was like, "Well, it's that thing over there. It's tuned a little bit lower. You can, follow the bass line, or maybe just play the third of every chord or something." And so I think that's what I did. I think I played the chorus, but I just played the third of every chord, down a lower register. And it sounded really cool. And I remember thinking, oh, that was kind of neat. I don't know if I'll ever need that again, but that, but that was a neat thing.
So this is Mark, and let's just say he's picked up a guitar once or twice. But I heard the word on the street is that he's a baritone expert, so I decided to ask him some questions.
And so I figured I should just buy one to have as a studio tool, essentially.
Yeah.
And so I got a Dan Electro, maybe 2015 or something. And I used it on one of my records, again, as just kind of a textural part, because I think most of the time I had heard it played was, in sort of like a country concept, or maybe rock, or some textural, ethereal tremolo kind of thing. But I decided to play funk and R&B grooves on it.
So why would anybody play one of these?
It makes you think compositionally in a different way. And I think for me, that's important, because I am a guitar player. That's my voice. That's my language. But I love making music. I love writing songs of the instrumental variety, because I'm not a good singer, and I've never really been great at lyrics. So I'm stuck with with guitar. But for me, it opens up a new realm of possibility for timbre and tone and groove, really. I mean, the way that I use it, it's somewhere in between a funk bass and a funk guitar.
Yeah.
And of course, sometimes it gets into the kind of aggressive rock side as well. But for me, it's all about coming up with great riffs that are hooks. I think that's kind of the why I like the baritone so much, is that you can play these great riffs that just sit in a very specific part of your psyche. I don't know. It feels different, right? It's not a bass, it's not a guitar, it's a baritone.
Yeah. So
you kind of have to let it be its thing. When guitar players first pick up baritones, they want to play them like they play their 22 fret Floyd Rose shred machines. And it's like, well, you can't.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you can. Yes, you can. But you don't need to. You need to let it be what it is. Don't make it something it's not.
So why would someone choose to get an actual baritone guitar instead of just like tuning down?
Well, string tension is a big part of it. I find that there's a certain point where if you have like a 25.5-inch scale guitar, like a standard Fender, you can tune it low. You can keep tuning it lower and lower and putting bigger and bigger strings on it. But there's a threshold where you cross where your intonation is going to be wonky. The action could get strange. It's going to feel really slinky. Now, of course, that all depends on your actual physicality of how you play the instrument. So it might work for you. I mean, I know there are some guitar players out there that use like 9s or 10s and tune down to C, right? So I don't know how they do it, but they do it.
Okay.
Yeah. But I don't know what string gauge McGee uses, but like for example, if I take 25 and a half, I could tune it down to B, but I have to use like 13s or something. And it works, but I think the longer scale, you get a little bit more snap in the attack of the tone, and you lose some of that slinky feeling. Now, the slinky feeling can be cool if you're maybe soloing, but if you're really just digging into some grooves, you want a little bit of that extra resistance, and I think you get that from the longer scale. So most of my baritones are 27.7 and higher.
Yeah.
So up until, I think, the Dano might actually be 29 inches, I think.
Oh, wow. That is
I think so. 28 and a half. I don't know. You can look it up, folks, on the internet, but...
So since I'm going to be using heavier strings than usual, how crazy will it actually be for me to get used to this with the left hand?
Man, it actually doesn't. It's not that crazy because the tuning is so low. Now, you don't expect to bend necessarily the way you would. Let the instrument kind of almost dictate how it wants to be played, which I know is completely the antithesis of how we are supposed to approach guitars, because everybody's always like, I want the guitar to get out of the way, right? Yeah. And that's what we want. But if you let the baritone kind of tell you what's supposed to happen, then it'll get out of the way. You have to. It's like taming a wild horse or something. You have to find this nice language between you and the instrument.
This is really the part where tonally I started to experiment with these things and figure out what they could do in terms of versatility. And it really all started with just like the regular positions. And we have the neck position. Same thing with the middle. And the bridge. This one in particular, the Del Sol having the out of phase switch, where the middle positions you have like the mid scoop thing, that was completely stacking on to just how different my experience with a baritone was as opposed to like my standard tuned guitars. But even with just figuring out how it sounded, I knew Mark had highly encouraged exploring it in the context of arrangement, and I knew that's where I had to go next. So this is going to be my first time producing with it, and I'm nervous. The track doesn't necessarily need baritone, but I feel like it'll add some cool flavors. Even the simple things like transposing I'm not even used to yet. As I sat there playing and arranging with this thing, I started to recall everything Mark said about exploring this new world. And although I wasn't yet fully familiar, it felt like I had finally found something new. But I want to really make sure I don't take that something new for granted, and in the future, I'm really excited to see where this whole baritone journey will go. But anyways, that's the baritone. And thank you so much for watching. This has been one of the more fun adventure discoveries that I've done over the past couple of months. Thank you so much to both Ariel and Mark for taking the time. Two of probably the best players we have on the planet. I really appreciate and look up to both of them, so make sure to check out their stuff. Also, if you want to know anything more about the Del Sol or any of the other gear that I used in this video, I'll have all of the links below. Make sure to check it out. It's one of the best ways to support the channel, if that's something you want to do. Or if you're just curious about any of the other gear that I use on this channel, amps, pedals, mics, heck, even the camera, make sure to check out those links. Like and subscribe if you had a good time, and most importantly, most important of all, have a fantastic night.